have to be strong in today's world. Keep your focus and up on what you believe in, how to achieve all your dreams. Keep moving forward, never accept less than who you are. Live your best life, be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black. Beautiful day here in the 242. Hope that everybody's doing well, that you're taking care of yourself, all of that good stuff. We are here with Dr. E. Today is Relationship Day. As per usual, whenever Dr. E is on the show, we are going to have an very informative, educational show, family and marriage therapist. Listen, all of y'all keep asking, how do I reach Dr. E? Look for Dr. Edrika Richardson, man. Look for Dr. Edrika Richardson. Go to a website, rpc-ltd.com. I mean, we've been doing this for like a solid year now. rpc-ltd.com. Dr. Edrika Richardson, go ahead, get your family and marriage in order. Really, she's exceptional. And so I'm hoping that all of you just use her as much as I use her on the show. Also joining us today with a special topic is our good friend Jonathan Edgecombe. But before we bring Jonathan on, I want to welcome Dr. E, and she's going to lay the groundwork for today's discussion, y'all. We are talking today about sex and relationships. Yes, sex and relationships. Why does it matter? You know, of course we know sex matters. But within the course of a relationship, apparently there's an evolution to sex and relationships. Not just that some people have a lot of sex and a lot of relationships all at the same time. Something is very odd with that picture. We welcome all the way from her wonderful offices, Dr. Edrika Richardson. Dr. E, darling.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I love Relationship Day on the show so we can get people thinking and talking and connecting to their minds and their bodies. So we got to, sprinkle a little knowledge on them so that they can figure out where they fit in all of this stuff. Because even though we'll focus a lot today with maybe the couple dynamic, I think it's important that people who are single as well know their bodies and educate themselves on what is sex for them with their bodies, because they're single sex. You know what single sex is?
Yeah, they're single sex.
Yeah, meaning like you could have sex by yourself when you're single.
Okay, all right.
And I won't say the words because I don't need us to get in trouble, but I assume that because it's scientific, but those are things that people do by themselves to pleasure themselves during time.
Like nothing. No, that doesn't happen. Who needs to do that? Who needs to do that? That's not.
Well, you got to figure out if you don't use it, you lose it. So make sure it's working down there. So sex is so important and a huge part, in relationships. And I think it's very important that we have conversations every now and then about the sexual, like you said, the sexual evolution that can happen. Your bodies are changing, your minds are adapting, you're maturing. So the ways you started out when y'all were like swinging from chandeliers early on in the relationship probably ain't working now, especially as you guys are older physically and mentally. And so we have to have those conversations because people don't. It's interesting. Certain topics we just stay away from, and they're so important to the relationship dynamic. Like, it sounds like a trick question, but sex is huge in all relationships.
In all relationships. So why is it so hard to talk about? Why is it that even now I'm more concerned with Urka having an issue with this conversation than the conversation itself?
Right, and that's because I think we have kind of demonized sexual practices throughout the world. And so we've also applied our moral values as to how and when and why we talk about sex. And that's even when you think of religious institutions who have avoided those conversations with their congregations because, no, that's not what Jesus people do. But let me tell you.
But Jesus people have a lot of children. Jesus people have a lot of children. That's immaculate conceptions. Just abound.
So sex is a normal part of every person's life. And when you think about it, I think the other part is that we struggle too when it comes to different types of sex and whether the relationships with sexuality are heterosexual or non-heterosexual. So sex is anything really you and your partner do consensually that involves erotic and sexual touch and pleasure. And for the most part, it involves a lot of genital pleasure. So there's different types of it, and we could talk throughout the course of the show about it, whether it's oral or if it's vibrators or hands or whatever it is. But the whole idea is that sex is a huge part of relationship, and partners need to define it, because one of the things that has been happening a lot lately that I've seen is that when people are reaching different sexual peaks in their life, and especially in couple dynamics, that can create a lot of conversation and a lot of sometimes miscommunication, feelings of rejection. And because we don't talk about it, where they're going to get the information, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are taught that you have to have sex when you're in a relationship, but we don't talk about when sex fails, because sex can fail. Like, I don't know.
Sex fails?
Sex can fail. Let's say, for instance.
Fail at what? Fail at being sex?
Body. For women, let's say you're not producing enough hormone levels that body produces its natural lubricants. For males, maybe you can't hold your erection. What I'm saying is that all those things are normal parts of physical health that can happen, but nobody educates us and talks about it. There are other people, there are actually sexual disorders, right, that exist, that have been clinically diagnosed and proven. There are things like vaginismus or dyspareunia, and I'm saying words that people won't know, but those are sexual disorders they're people who have pain disorders. Like, they can literally not have sex because it creates pain for their bodies. And those disorders are a lot to do with what's going on in the mind. There are people who've had trauma so that they can't contract their muscle walls, right? It's not that. And so we have to talk and educate people about this. So you said, why don't we talk about it? It's taboo. We have created the taboo, and I think it's time that we dismantle the taboo so that people can be fully educated and comfortable with their bodies. This is why we have young people being abused, and they don't know to call it abuse because no one has talked to them about what is healthy and not healthy. Mm-hmm. So I know we're concerned, and we're going to try our best to have the most appropriate conversation.
Yeah.
But I want to say, the reason I think we're so worried about having this conversation is because the people that exist that have created the standards are using standards that are morally based, mm-hmm. and not necessarily scientific or humanly based as to what naturally happens.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there.
No, and I'm with you, because I think it is so taboo, the discussion of for something that happens all the time, that is happening all the time, sanctioned and unsanctioned, right? Like, mm-hmm. that is going on in our communities where we have these levels of pedophilia and perversion, and we're not talking even about that, right? Like, we don't even want to talk about the wrong things. And when it's healthy and consenting and consensual, you want to talk about it, you and probably, and a lot of folks aren't even talking about it with their spouse. Like, sex with your spouse is not a conversation that you're having. It is an action that you're doing. But is it working, right? Like, is it a working thing? Is it just a function, an obligatory role that we go through? Or is it something that is making love, that is exciting, that is adding to the relationship, that is a show of affection, right?
And it changes over time, because I think what part of it is, we've associated good relationships with sexuality, assuming that quite naturally happy couples always have more sex, and miserable people don't do it. But that's not necessarily the truth, because I know a lot of couples who are having sex and they're not happy, or they use sex after arguments or disagreements and think that that's healthy sex too.
That's unhealthy sex.
That is unhealthy sex. I'm not saying it's not adrenaline based, it's probably gonna be real good, but I'm saying that if you are associating it or using it to cover up the issues that are happening, all you're doing is masking. And eventually everything that we bury comes to light, and you're gonna have to deal with it. And so one of the important things to understand is that when they looked at the research of it and they did relationship satisfaction, especially when it comes to sex, only about 15 to 20% of relationship satisfaction is equated to sex.
15 to 20%. Wow.
Right. And so when you look at it, a lot of people, it's not a consistent one size fits all model when it comes to sex. It can mean very different things to very different relationships. So the most important part is that two people in the relationship are on the same page about the sex frequency, what is sexual practices they like, and that they continue to have an open dialogue about it. And so I think what we need to look at is that when sex then becomes off track, though, it can create a lot of relationship dissatisfaction, but it should really tell couples or indicate to couples that maybe that this is a sign that there's something larger going on in the relationship. Because I can think of one couple I had like a year or so ago, and they came in and they were like, this relationship is not going well, but we having sex. And so they were like, when this goes, we know we done so, because this is the only thing that's keeping us together. We have good chemistry. So that's important to understand.
All right, we'll bring in right now Jonathan Edgecombe, my good friend, always here with us now not always, but has become a friend of the show as well, and so we'll bring him on right now. Jay, welcome to the Hit Back, buddy. How are you?
I'm great. How you guys doing? Good to be here.
Good to have you. All right. So I know you've heard what we're discussing today. We're talking about sex and relationships, the health of it, right? The importance of it. And you will be, because, of course, one of the things too, Jonathan, through the Facebook pages you founded, a lot of conversation comes up on this topic, right? A lot of conversation comes up on this topic. And you kind of went off center in your camera there first. I need you to center yourself in the camera. There you go. And you still can't, look at him. You still ain't centered. There you go. This is a conversation this is a topic of conversation that comes up a lot in terms of what it means. And we have, and Dr. E, you can, and as we discuss this topic, it isn't for the want or the lack of it. People are having it all the time. That it's just like out of context. People are having sex with other people. People are having not having sex in their relationship, and then using that as a reason to have sex outside of their relationship. Right. And sometimes women use it as some sort of weapon. I've heard that that it's being withheld, that to whip you in shape.
So I think one of the things to point out is that we have a tendency to say that, or make the assumption that sex itself is a need, right? And that men need sex regardless of who or what it comes from. And women have the tendency to assume that sex can only be a form of intimacy or love. Both of these are wrong, actually, because we know that both people get a lot of trouble in their relationships for just thinking that way. And that goes back to what you just said, right? That assuming that men if you're not giving to them, they're out there cheating. That's not necessarily true. And I'm not saying that you withhold it, but I'm saying that we can't go on the assumption that they just can't control themselves. I think that's the narrative that I hear.
That's a narrative. Yeah.
And the other part is that we can't always say that women always want this loving, let's always make love sex either. So I think that we need to look at this from a psychological needs perspective. The essential thing is that if we don't meet the other person's needs, then that's when we start to feel that the relationship is becoming mentally unstable, right? And so to be happy and to be stable people, we need to make sure that our needs are consistently met. So I think what happens is that we have to ask ourselves, what is our sex strategy? What are our sexual needs within a relationship? Because sex can be great, right? But what is the purpose we're doing or having sex for? And I want everyone to question that. I know we have this narrative, and I'd be curious to hear what Jonathan has to say about this, that men can't control themselves out there, and so that if they can't control whether or not, or how this yearning, that if they don't pump and dump, essentially, that this is going to create an issue. So I'd be curious to know a little bit about how it feels from a male's perspective when you're thinking about as you mature, it's more about the connection, right? I've heard that from a lot of male clients as they get older, that it's really much more about the connection. And for a lot of female clients, it becomes a driving force as they have a need, just a basic drive need that just needs to be fulfilled.
Yeah. Men can control themselves. We do it in different spheres of our daily lives. We have to control ourselves. When it comes to sex, it's something that we want, not necessarily a need per se, and you can control yourself. And like you were alluding to, as we get older, because I guess in our younger years, it was like a challenge. It was like as men was like a ego thing, that how many persons you could conquer as it relates to females, and it was less emotional, a less a connection, and more of a conquest. But as you get older and you start to mature, and you eventually find a person that you deem someone you want to spend your life with, it tends to be, I mean, sex still is important, but it's less about just the action, and more it tends to be more about the connection with that person. Whereas some women tends to be more about not the action, and maybe less about the connection as they get older. So to sum it up, men can control themselves, and as we mature and start to I guess value a female and their relationship, we tend to look less for the physical action of it, and more as a connection and an emotional tie with that person.
So is there a certain point, because my hypothesis is that relationship maturity part that you described for men happens, I would say on an average, I found it to happen anywhere, I would say over 35, but the round number that usually I see consistently is about 38.
Yeah, you somewhat right. 30, but 30, yeah, about 38, 35, 38. You tend to start to slow down. That's making men sound like they're like hard animals, but you tend to slow down and start to value your relationship more. And I think that's why I don't know advise young men who's like 19, 20, and that whole up to 30 to rush in to get locked down in a serious relationship. At that time, I think you should be trying to develop yourself and get to know yourself, and then you could value a relationship more. And I think as we, like I said, like we get older, we value a relationship more, and hence as you mature, the cheating most times slows down, and you tend to just want to fall in love and be with that one person. So yeah, as you get older, you mature. In most
Okay.
cases.
Most cases. All right. We go ahead.
No, you can't speak in absolutes. There's always exceptions to the rules. No matter what, it goes for both genders. No matter what you do and how you do it, someone still may step out. So there's always exceptions to the rules. But for the most part, if you talk to most men, as even men who used to cheat on their wives way back in the day, when they get older, they start to value that woman more. When they get older, they say, "Well, I don't know what I can do without this woman, this woman." And but that happens later on sometimes than when it was earlier in their relationship.
No,
Dr. E.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that you'd be surprised at how, because I've had clients will ask me, well, he cheated at me before, he cheated at a certain point in the relationship, will he do this again? The honest answer is that anybody can do anything again. It's their choice and whether or not they're choosing to be different. And I found that with a lot of males, that if they had those kind of provocative behavior early on, as they get to mature and they become more settled, they tend to, more often than not, they don't want to do it. It takes too much work. And so they get kind of comfortable and content with their relationships, and they're all in, believe it or not. I know at that point, you just have to hope that the person you're all in with hasn't run out of gas, essentially, because that can happen, right? You wear the person down. And so at the end of the day, I think there is still a strong link between a good sex life and a happy relationship overall. So don't let me not say that. But I think that we have to understand what role sexual satisfaction does play within a relationship dynamic. Because at the end of the day, it tends to, there are changes that'll happen throughout it, and we have to be talking about it. I'm curious always about when I have couples come in, if they talk about sexual fantasies. Because one of the things about the different levels of intimacy within a relationship, and most people, like I've said on the show before, most people think intimacy is just sex. Actually, no.
Hold that thought, because I want you to continue on that thought. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. E and Jonathan here as we discuss sex and relationships. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We have joining us Dr. Edrika Richardson and the one and only Jonathan Edgecombe. Folks, thank you so much for joining us on the show. All right, we're talking about sex and relationships. Awesome topic. And it's about intimacy, right? So we're talking about it. Okay, because there's so many, I think, layers to it. And I wonder if we, you guys mentioned in the earlier part before the break that there's some phases to it. There's sex and maturity. Jonathan talked about when you're younger, young men consider it as a conquest. And it makes me wonder if when does sex become emotional and something that is done with the head as well and the heart as well, rather than just the body? Like, when does that transition? And when do we as women, Dr. E, like what phases are we in? Is there like a timeline, a mindset, an age set? Anyway, I have tons of questions on this because I think that there is that process of maturity for both sexes and understanding sex and relationships and your body and what do you need and what you don't need. And because I think a lot of young women believe that you lead with your body. Society says that we lead with sexuality, right? And that we are to be conquered and we are the conquest and all of this thing. And it kind of shapes our securities and insecurities, right? So, Dr. E, let me let you rip. Right when we ended, we were talking about, these matters. So let me let you continue from where you ended.
So I was going to start to say about intimacy, right? So I always say that physical intimacy is there are different levels to physical intimacy, and sex being a part of physical intimacy is only the icing on the cake, right? But you have to build the cake to get to a place where you're able to cool it off and ice in it. And so if over time you're not doing things that build that connection with your person over time, when it comes time for icing on the cake, ain't nobody wants you to touch them. That's just how it works. And so you do that stuff by little gestures like, oh, I don't know, Jonathan, you ever had a good head rub? Or if somebody's holding your hand, or when you think of things like sitting down and just having a really good conversation. All of those things are ways to lead up and build to getting to the sexual part of intimacy. And the other part of sexual intimacy is not always just penetrative. Most people always associate that with being the pinnacle, but there was a movie years ago, I can't remember the name of it now, and there was this one scene where this dude didn't even touch the girl, and they were blowing the flower. He was blowing like this flower over her body. Oh gosh, it was a teen movie. And that the intensity between them two, I'm going to remember the name of it in a minute. The intensity between them two and how he was blowing the thing over her body, like she orgasmed, right? And that's another word we don't talk about a lot, an orgasm, and how that happens, because I've known women who are years old who have never had an orgasm in their life, like not one. And it's important for us to identify and know what that is, what that feels like to have that body eruption and what it really feels like and what it can do for you. And so first part is, you said something is that we have to identify our bodies. We have to know what our bodies are, how they exist, and how they work. And so when I said there is single sex, meaning that before you get into a relationship, you should really spend some time with your body. You should spend some time looking at it, knowing it, touching it for yourself, to figuring out that you can identify and feel connected to it. It's more of a connection. Because if you think the only way to connect to your body is when somebody else is touching you, then you're missing out. You just missing out on your whole body. And so I try to get people, I remember I always have clients, I'll give them an activity, like I want you to go home and go ahead and tell me everything about your body and come back. And they're like, what do you mean? Especially people who've had trauma, a lot of sexual trauma, because their relationship with their body is almost existential. They don't know their own bodies. They know it only because somebody else has created a violation to their bodies, and that is the only way they feel comfortable with it. And so they have to relearn how to connect with this thing that they walk around in. Because literally, when I think of being comfortable in one's skin, that's what I think about.
Interesting. Okay, so then, even with, let me talk about this this level of intimacy, right? Because we're in a sexualized world.
Yes.
All right, not just, I mean, I have my issues with the way we sexualize young girls, and when they go missing, they with man, and that's okay, right? Like we just seem to have this concept that sex at a young age is what happens, and we don't have a connection with how this affects relationships down the road, right? Down the line. Is this hypersexualized world that we're living in? Your children with TikTok and with YouTube, and now with all of our dating apps and Tagged. Jonathan taught us about Tagged, the website earlier. So I don't even know what that is,
but I feel that and just to harp on young females, I think women have found a way with the social platform how to monetize their bodies. So they kind of sometimes they use they kind of objectify themselves in a way, or they say, instead everybody's gonna objectify my body anyway, I might as well monetize it. And I think a lot of young ladies at a young age, they have identified that, listen, hold on, I can use what I got to make me some money, which is not correct or not right, but it could be that a lot of the older or persons in their lives have indoctrinated them and said, listen, if you're gonna do this thing, don't do it for free. And I've heard a lot of persons in the even in the islands. I've heard that in the islands where older women are saying, get something for it. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but they've found a way to monetize, I guess, their body, and that's what's happening a lot in the society as well.
How is this hypersexualization affected our relationships though? Like, because folks, we say older, you want to settle down, right? Jonathan and I know if I necessarily buying, and I hear what you and Dr. E saying, but I don't know, boy. So you fellas get older when they're 60, 70 and their body dry up, all of a sudden they won't be monogamous. Like, what is that? Like, what kind of game that is? All of a sudden, after you don't use up and use a raisin in the sun, I supposed to take it as some sort of maturity and give you a trophy because you decided to stop sleeping around when you couldn't have been mature enough earlier? Like,
not
what?
necessarily. No. You might meet the right person at the wrong time in your life. I'm not saying. I'm not condoning. If I was together with you, for instance, we're 19, I cheated straight through, and then when I get hit 38 or 35, I start to realize how valuable you are to me. I am not condoning that. I'm saying for the person who may meet the young lady, but she's also matured as well. You meet me when I'm mature, I value. Most men tend to be at a mature state where I value the relationship more, where I may not cheat on you. But if you met me younger, I may have been a wild child, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not condoning if we were to get all those years and I was doing you wrong. No, I'm not agreeing with that. But I'm saying how it is, men tend to mature a little bit later than women.
And that sexualization affects. See, because I'm trying to figure out how do we get to this place where, and then that's a discussion of relationships and sex. How do we get to this place where we are constantly having to be concerned with, in relationships with or not understanding how sex is fitting into our relationship. We do something, and how do you have sex and not be happy? Like, how?
Well, it's simply you're doing what your body is conditioned to do, and it just some people. I remember this one time when I was going to KOD, and I had a conversation at one point with an exotic dancer, and because I was so curious about how, because you would look at some of them and see that their body there, but their mind
Was somewhere else.
And so I just asked because I was just curious. I was like, so what was on your mind? She's like, I was making my grocery list. And I was like, oh, okay. And so some people have gotten to a place where they could just disassociate the two. So just because I'm sleeping with you doesn't mean that I'm not just getting my rocks off too, because we all have needs that need to be filled. It doesn't mean that I'm happy or I'm content. I know plenty of couples where a partner's told me they just do it because that is their obligation. They feel nothing out of it. And because that the partner has no idea that the relationship is in disarray. And so and so the person's like, well, I don't want to stop it for them to say that, like, I'm not doing my part. I'm doing my obligation. And I think, I don't know if we just get so self-centered to the place that we're not actually connecting and paying attention enough to our partners to realize that they're faking it. They are literally just faking it.
And that's the point I'm making now. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, okay.
No, but that's the point I'm making. As men get older, they do realize it. I mean, probably back in the day, you
didn't care.
Like you'd hear the saying in the barbershop, fix nasty, which means that I don't care if you sleep. I don't care. I just want that particular act. But as you, like Dr. T was saying, as you get older, you do realize now her mind is somewhere else. Her body's here, but her mind is on the other side of town. And you do, like, it's not fun anymore. Like, okay, what's wrong? What are you doing? Why are you just laying here? And that's when it becomes frustrating for men, a lot of men, because we realize now you're just laying here. It's not fun anymore.
Right, but then at that point, hopefully the first thing the male does is take accountability for what they contributed to. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of memes on this lately, which is the idea that you can tell me about how moody I got or that I'm not the same person, but you're not taking accountability for how you contributed to this behavior, to this attitude now. The only thing you're seeing is that I'm being different. And so it's important that the person recognizes too that the role that they play, because now that you're ready.
That's right. Now that you're woke. Now that you woke, right? Now you won't have a relationship because you're gonna sleep with all of Bimini, Nassau, Grand Bahama, Atlanta.
But when she talks about accountability, women tend to run from accountability themselves because you yourself, you stayed. You had a choice to leave. If I was treating you right for, if I didn't treat you right for 10, 15 years, you stayed, but now you want to act funny because now I'm catching myself up or whatever. You don't act funny now. Now that I'm acting right like you wanted me to, you could leave. So you have to be accountable for your actions and how you contributed to this relationship as well.
Right, contributing by letting it happen.
By staying and by allowing someone to treat you in disarray, and now you're in a space where you left the relationship mentally, and now the dude is coming around, and now there's an issue. So my thing is accountability, and back to what Dr. E is both. I think it's not only on one gender. I think both genders have to sit down. If they're going to remain, if they're going to remain in the relationship, we need to discuss it the way forward, because it makes no sense. We still doing this if your mind's somewhere else, and I'm here. I'm present now. You said, you know what? I had enough of this all these years. You beat me down for all these years. I'm no longer into it. So we both could try to move on futuristically, in my opinion.
I like it.
I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you that everybody needs to take accountability. So you want me to keep going?
Yeah, go on. Okay.
So one of the things they taught that we can talk about is the idea that sex tends to decrease in long-term relationships because it starts in hyperdrive, right? So the start of a relationship, what we tend to find is that it involves a lot of sexual energy because it's new, right? Anything new and shiny, we like to do a lot of it. And so you're at that point usually exploring physical intimacy with someone for the first time. And then the novelty of the surge and those bounding chemicals, we all experience when we start to fall in love with there. But guess what? Then it starts to wear off. So couples then settle into what we call their regular like ebb and flow of desire, which usually lowers that sex hyperdrive during the initial stage. And I think one of the things couples need to be conscious of is that you ain't gonna always be what y'all started out with. This is a conversation I have to have too much during the course of couples therapy. Like, well, when we started, we were like this. Was that like 5 years ago? Was that 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Are we talking about something that happened within the year? Because if it's not within the year, it's not going to be the same. Let me just put that out there. So get out of your mind that, and I had to have this conversation recently with a couple because the person was like, well, we've been now together for like 20 years, right? But when we started, we used to do all this stuff. First of all, y'all 20 years strong in this. Your bodies don't look like the 20-year-old self. You have kids, you have responsibilities. But on top of that, you have budding careers that still require a lot of time out of you. But yet you're still expecting to have 20-year-ago sex. How? Are you making the time for that? Are you physically fit to do that? Because let's all be honest, that endurance changes on everybody's level.
It needs to work. You need to work the same no more.
The legs don't move how they used to. The back the back been hurting for a couple of months. It ain't the same. Some things just ain't the same anymore.
So it's normal for people. Another thing is it's normal for people to not feel like having sex sometimes. We got to normalize that. Like some people's interest in sex comes and goes in phases. And it could depend on so many things. It could depend on your stress levels. It could depend on your lack of sleep, your hormonal fluctuations. It could depend on medication. You might have side effects from the meds. You could have some mental health issues. You could have some body image issues. If there are relationship issues, if they're just life changes, like a new job, a new baby, like all of that stuff. Like, so if we have to normalize this conversation that, you know what, just right now, I just don't feel like it. This has nothing to do with you. And I've been having a lot of conversation lately with people, especially when they've just had a baby or even a second kid or something like that, because what you have to realize is that the female body has to recalibrate every time a woman has a child. And it doesn't always work in 6 weeks.
No, just because the stitches are out means it's.
And then on top of that, come on, she ain't had no sleep. She probably ain't eating the way she is. She probably know the last time she had a shower. And then you try to touch her. So this person pulling my boobs, and you want to pull my boobs? Look.
But this goes back to connection though. I mean, if I'm actively participating, because when my ex had a child, I was actively there. I wasn't getting no sleep either because I was up feeding my little girl as well. So we both wasn't interested at that time. So it goes back to if he's actively participating. I mean, they're talking about the childbirth aspect of it. You know what you went through. You know what she's dealing with, and you know if the baby had cholera. If you're actively participating,
call it, not cholera.
You know what I'm talking about. But if you're not just leaving her with the child, you going up with your friends or whatever, just leaving her to take care of, so you wouldn't be all up under her. But back to she said normalizing when someone don't want to have sex. Women have to understand when a man says, I'm tired. It shouldn't be like who you messing with. Are you cheating? Sometimes men get tired, but women, at least in the Bahamas, if a man says he's tired, I don't know. It's like, oh my God, he's cheating or he's gay or he's
being tired. Y'all ain't tired.
No, we.
Hey, Dr. E, They died.
No,
I know. I never heard
No.
no baby mother say they
So
tired.
I've heard some weird stories because I know somebody who will say, "Oh, you tired? Well, let me sniff your whole body," and I'm like, "Hold on, that's
Oh, hold up.
like a lot of work. Like
Yeah,
you
that's
gotta go
what- she has
through all
to
What
the
do you
security
smell
step.
for when you sniffing? Never mind. Never
I
mind.
don't
Never
know.
mind.
Some
Never mind.
gas. She's trying to spend some soap. But
That-
but that goes back to the relationship, being in a relationship for a long term, being in a relationship for a long term. If I've been with you for 15, 10 years, I may be tired. I may not be, it's not that I don't want you, but I may not be as ready to jump on you like I used to be because you're my woman, you're my wife. So you have to understand. It's
So
not always. Go ahead.
I think that's a good point, Jonathan, because people desire their wives differently than they desire their girlfriends. That's a great point we need to put out there
Oh,
because
that's interesting.
I've heard men say that several times, which is that because it's almost like they conceptualize I have to treat you a certain way because
Right.
of the role you play. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I know sometimes this could be frustrating for the partner, but at the other times it can be a very, very like it's like I revere you to the
We
status.
tend to put our wives on, at least a lot of the men I talk to, and even me back in the day, we tend to put our wives on a pedestal, and it's like use the word my wife used the one who bear my children. We handle you differently, even when it comes to sex, and that could be detrimental too, because you might go outside and treat the side priest and act with all your desires with them, but when you come home, you just doing the mundane missionary, just the mundane physical intimacy. But when you go outside, you wilding out, you being really who you want to be, and so that could be detrimental as well. Because you should be with your wife, you should be yourself, and she might desire you to be wild sometimes as well, not the humdrum same going through the same motions or whatever too. I may need her to go outside.
Yeah, that's man. You speaking a word, brother? You speaking a word?
Another
I
part
think-
too is that
Yeah.
remember that lower sexual desire can sometimes be related to a lot of relationship issues. So good sex usually means a happy relationship, but the reverse is also true too. So meaning that if you're not happy with your partner, you're probably not going to be very happy with your sex life. Like they can go hand in hand. So if one or both partners isn't interested in sex, it's possible that there's some underlying relationship issues that are being like brushed under the rug and they need to be addressed. And so until you guys figure that out and figure out what's going on and have a conversation about it, you probably ain't gonna have good sex. So let me just put that out there. Like you just
See,
What?
like I said, I talked to a lot of guys, and I have this guy said his his girlfriend, now his wife, never, when it comes to oral
Never gave
oral
fellatio?
pleasures, never, right, and he was thinking now, when we get married, and this policy that when we get married it's going to change. And I was trying to tell him before, I said, buddy, if she ain't doing it now, I'm not saying she never do it, she probably don't want to do it to you, but it's not going to change when when you got married. And now sadly he is concentrating, thinking about going outside his marriage just to get that one aspect of what he's lacking at home. But I think he need to take accountability that she told you who she was when you guys were dating. You should have listened, in my opinion.
Yeah, and figure out and what about those conversations though? I mean, I think in relationships, and when you settle down and this is the person, this is the one you decided. It may not, you might find out later, 10 years down the line, that ain't, but at the point when you made that decision, how important is it to have these conversations? Like the gentleman there with Jonathan is saying, it,
But
can
what
she
happened?
adjust?
No, but what happened was, when it comes to men and discussing, I don't know about the new generation of women, but when it came to when it comes to dating and discussing sex, it's almost like taboo. Like Dr. E was saying, it's like, what are you talking? You just want me for sex, and so men shy away from that because they don't want the woman to think, in the dating stage that I'm only interested in you in sex. So they talk about other things, talk about how much money you make or where you works. A lot of the stuff that the woman wants to talk about, they tend to talk in that direction. But sometimes when it comes to what pleases him or what pleases whatever, sometimes go under the rug because you trying to capture the woman or get her interested. So you tend not to, because you're taught that talking about sex. A lot of women I even talk to, they would say, "Hold on, why are you even talking about this already? Oh, this is
Yeah.
Are you only interested in sex?" But I'm thinking about, you should, before wasting so much time. You might, certain things that I may be into, you may not be into, or certain things that you may be into, I may not be into. Why waste time and not talk about it? Not saying that we shouldn't only talk about that.
What is the time though? Because it can be within the first week. Don't be trying to I feel like don't be asking me or something in the first week or the first night.
First
come on,
month. I don't know you like that. Who are you talking about? You're trying to.
A month might be long. I go with the month thing.
But women, a lot of women in that first week, they start to hint certain things financially. Not all women, but they asking about where you work. No. Because hold on, because see, like I said, you guys don't date women. Men do. So
That's
men
true.
can tell you what happens out there. I'm telling you, a lot of women wants to know about your financial stability. Not saying that's wrong, but and sometimes that's a litmus test. You will hear women say, I want to test him to see if he could do certain things. I just want to test him. So what's this litmus test for men? How do we test you guys? Because men looking for physical compatibility initially, but we can't even talk about that initially. But women are quick to certain things they want to address right off the bat.
That's a good point. I mean, it's a great point. Great point. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Hold that thought. We got to go. We have to take a quick commercial break. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Jonathan Edgecombe, Dr. Adrika Richardson. We're talking about sex and relationships. The conversation is heating up as per usual. Loving always when you have when you throw Jonathan on these shows. He brings us a wonderful insight. Of course, Dr. E, with her slew of clients. I mean, she just comes in all of this context there too, right? I can't wait. I just love shows like this. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We will be back right after.
Be strong in today's world. Keep your focus and up. What you believe in, how to achieve all your dreams. Keep moving forward. Never accept less than who you are. Live your best life. Be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Jonathan Edgecombe, Dr. Adrika Richardson joining us. We're talking about sex and relationships. I'm so happy we're having this conversation because it's a frank conversation. You guys know I love when we have Dr. E on. You love Dr. E. Don't forget you can reach her at rpc-ltd.com. Dr. E, what's the phone number again?
425-0718. 425-0718.
And of course, you can join the group that I just get a lot of content from for the show. Dr. E can tell you sometimes I slide her the question that you see on the Facebook page in the group. Questions, real questions women want men to answer, right? Mm-hmm. So you can go to their Facebook page. You would need to request to be added to the group. Click on it and just put your questions there. People post their questions anonymously. Jonathan, as the founder, one of the admins, copies it, takes your name out of it, posts it in the group for everybody to answer these questions. Oh, we got no. A lot of them mean no. Some just don't take some of these answers and responses. I say if you got real relationship issues, call Dr. E. But I find the questions and the responses quite entertaining, and they lead to some great discussions here on the show. So that group is real questions women want men to answer. But I will say this, men ask questions there as well, and they get a lot of response. So it's good. Jonathan Edgecombe, Dr. Adrika Richardson, we're talking about sex and relationships. And when we ended off, guys, we were talking about this What the compatibility? What, I'm trying to remember the last thing we were discussing, Darcy. What was it?
We were talking about so that when the intimacy kind of changes, and I guess the other point, I guess where I could segue with this is that men deal with lower libido too at times, and that's something we need to talk about. We need to talk about, despite the fact that there are so many cultural stereotypes that not men want all sex all the time. Many men experience decreases in their sex drive. There is a thing called andropause that does happen. So it's the equivalent of menopause for men. And it's important that men are educated on that, because a lot of men don't know that can happen, because the image and the messages that have been out there is that like it just energizes them and it just keeps going and going, and that's not absolutely true. So, and we have to assume that people deal with it differently. One of the things I would urge is that males, I think it first starts with physical health. They have to be encouraged to make physical health a priority. Go into making sure they're going to the doctors and getting their annuals. Yes, you got to get your prostate checked at a certain point. That is actually a huge thing, especially for Black male health, that we need to check on, especially even males having breast cancer. Most males don't even think about it, right? And I'm not to be shady, but some of y'all boobs bigger than mine, so y'all really should be going to get checked out.
Not to be shady, she says, right after throwing that slap of shade.
So these are all things that are relevant, because you may not understand what's happening to your body. You may want to go and function. And we think about the disorders. We have erectile dysfunction disorder. That's one of them. We also have premature ejaculation. All of those things can exist, and we have ways to explain that to help you through it. Some of it's psychological. Some of it is physical health. Both go hand in hand, so you must get checked out, because your libido isn't going to be the same all the time.
I agree.
Yeah.
The point, but the difference is men are shamed though for not being able to perform for whatever the reasons are. Men in most society, at least in the Black community, are shamed, and they're shamed by women. And sadly, I heard some stories from men and women who kind of tease the guy, and it can lead to depression for a lot of men.
Wow.
Wait, what did they tease them about? Not being able to
rise to the occasion.
Oh, rise to the occasion. Okay, but you know, there are things like whiskey issues, or there are things like
drinking, right?
There are also sometimes it's the atmosphere or the person. You know, and let's not be honest, some of y'all women, y'all need to get checked out too, because y'all will smell right. So these are all things that can be a part of the problem. And so I think nobody should be shady of the other person. There's also hygiene. Like, hygiene is like the biggest thing.
Okay, I'm good. I'm glad we're here. Turn-ons and turn-offs. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go. Turn-ons and turn-offs for sex. I am always curious. What turns off a man from sex?
I want to know too.
I'm curious. What is a turn-off when it comes to sex? Because I feel like y'all could barrel through anything. Why did he see the sip is water? Jonathan,
is that water?
It is Gatorade, actually. One of the major turnoffs is Dr. E mentioned it already. Scent. Could you imagine you are about to perform fellatio or oral pleasures to this young lady, and when you get there, it smells like worse than part of ski dock after the Jones leave?
I mean, come on. I think the segment got to be redone. You can't. I don't know. It's supposed to smell worse.
No. But okay, that's judgment. You go down, you perform, and it's the scent is unbearable. That's some guys may borrow through that, but most guys will say, "Nah, it's not that serious. I'm done."
Okay,
I'm done.
sorry.
Guys,
hold on. Let me just interject. Anyone that wants to barrel through that needs to have a psychological check, because
guys with less options, they do. The guys with no options
you put your health at risk, because anybody smells like that and you continue to do, something is wrong with you, because you just put yourself in jeopardy. That's not normal. So
I agree.
that's the
No, I
comment
agree
right
with
there.
you.
That's the
I
comment.
agree with you.
That I
You-
don't even know what else to say about that.
No, but
Just
remember, women. You remember, you guys have more options when it comes to that particular act. You don't have to do much. You all you have to say is I want it, and you could probably look in your phone right now, and there's 10 guys that if you want to, they will do that. Men may not have that option. Some men. So if you don't have that option, if you actually get a lady there to do that, some men say, hell, I don't know when I'm gonna get this chance again. I'm not saying it's right. I don't think you should bow to it, but some men they turn their head and they do what they got to do. It is
Or
what
don't
it
turn their
happens.
head and do what they got to do. Gross.
I agree. That's going back to the turn off. That's one of the turn offs. A woman's attitude. Um, if if is if you make a man feel that it's like you're doing them a favor, like oh hurry up, let's get this. That's a turn off for a lot of men as well. And this goes back to men who have options. If you have options and a woman making you feel that they're doing you a favor, that tends to lessen the experience. Lastly, goes back to how how well kept down there is in terms of hair and hygienic and being, if it's like if it's really unkept and not well groomed, that's a problem. Especially if you demanding certain things to be done before certain penetration.
yeah,
That's nasty.
it's a jungle out there.
Yeah, but for men, and there's not a lot of turn offs, but certain few are deal breakers. Scent, um, being a jungle, like she said down there, is an issue. And if you just like a piece of wood, just that's just laying, just not even participating, it's not fun. So you may have a man even fake orgasm, fake like
What?
I heard that this week. How
How
is
does that
that
happen?
possible? Like, how is that possible?
it happens when if you depending on what position you are and if you were in protection, whatever, you would just after a while, especially if you're not feeling anything, if nothing's it's not enjoyable to you as a man, and you just want to get over it, and you don't want to hurt her feelings because most men don't like to hurt women's feelings when it comes to that particular arena. You just do the whole, you fake it, and most women don't look to see if he finished because especially if he's wearing protection, you're not gonna. Most women don't look down there to verify if he actually whatever. And so this way, a man come out and lie and say, "Oh my God, that was so great," and all that. And most women, egotistical, they tend to, "Yeah, I know, I told you," and and because most women, a lot of women feel that their particular situation is the best in the world or one of the best in the world, and so men just go along with it and say, "Hey, yes, by golly, yes, wow," and that's that. Because women, men stroke a lot of women's ego so much, it's hard to hear a man say that was trash. Most men are not going to tell a woman that's trash. So, and I blame men. We should be more honest, so women won't have this overwhelming sense of, my situation is the best because most men lie.
Let me go to this question. Sex. When does sex mean something? Right? When is it not just sex? When does sex mean something in a relationship? Like what mark is it when it crosses from being physical to emotional and spiritual for both men and women? And uh, you know, okay, let me go with that. Let's just go with that first. When does it? How do you know it means something for a man? How do you know when it means something?
For, at least for men, but I'm speaking for all men right now. For men, is when you in love with the person. When you already have the connection, the intimacy, and you feel like this is the one. That's when so for most men, and even for me, it's not just sex. It's like I'm not using sex as a get off just for me to get off. I'm using it as a connection to connect with this person. It's like when we do engage in that, it's less about me just reaching that goal. It's about us reaching that goal and how we can make how it's beneficial for both of us. And that happens usually when I feel that she loves me and I love her, and there's a connection between both of us. And that's when it transcends from just uh, and and it transcends just from that action, because like you're in tune with her, you know her, so you know that you have to build up that anticipation from that morning. You tap on her booty before she go to work, and you send us that text message saying, I can't wait to whatever. And it's mutual, when a woman is also sending a text message. And when a man feels that, wow, this she's also into me too, because she's not waiting for me to be the aggressor, she's also been the aggressor. And so it feels like there's a connection. So for men, we feel that, because a lot of people think men are not emotional, but we do feel that. And that's when it transcends from just a physical act to a more spiritual, mental act.
Dr. E?
So I think it can happen for different people at different points, and just because of how the connection starts, it may happen for somebody within the first few initial weeks because they feel so connected and energy driven. It can happen for some people, maybe not for a couple months into it. I think this is where you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of our relationship? Are we in this to kind of get our rocks off? Are we in this because we're trying to build something? I think once meaning is made within the relationship, then all of the levels of intimacy start to change and the directionality of them intensifies. There are some people you can just have really good sex with, and maybe there is no relationship there. And that is the thing that keeps you guys connected. And then there are other people, because it's the level of emotional intimacy, there's a level of spiritual intimacy, there's a level of recreational intimacy. All that stuff drives the physical intimacy more. So I think that that may take a little bit longer for it to change for the person. We also have to keep in mind health stuff and life changes, right? Big life changes also impact relationships, or when you feel things, because I've known people where, let's say early in a relationship, you go through a crisis, like a loss of a loved one, or even loss of a job. And because you guys went through something that changes the emotional system, which changes the level of intimacy and the intensity in which you feel things for the other person. So I think at the end of the day, sex is sexier, of course, when it's shared, exploration, and not a negotiation, right? It's something that we both want to do together, and we're not scorekeeping, right? No one has both people's interests and fantasies and everything are accounted for. We have had a healthy communication about hygiene. And those things create that long-term passion, that passionate, plentiful, bountiful amounts of scrumptious sexual behavior.
You were hungry. That's what
I
I
had
was.
Rice Krispie treats right there. Like, I'm hungry now.
I was about to figure out, is there a tart coming? I've never heard it sound like that before. So then, all right, what happens then in a relationship where, because I gather, and for folks who've gone through it, I gather that it is a big betrayal. What does having sex with someone else outside of the marriage do to a marriage? Does the sex matter differently to someone else, to one person than the other? Because I think a lot of times, and this goes back to something that we said earlier, right? If you find, okay, there's this mindset that men need sex, right? If you're not having sex with me, you're having sex with someone else, right? That they're gonna break. So I think a lot of women feel as if they're not even emotionally involved, they still have sex because they just don't want their spouse to have to go outside, right? So then they're doing that as, I guess, obligation. And then there are those who are probably in a relationship and they feel as if, well, sex is something that shows that intimacy matters. This is our relationship that is only reserved for couples. But you went outside, and so that must mean you don't love me anymore. What happens to a relationship that was monogamous, I guess, without the contracts, right? Or the ones that we talk about, the polyamorous, what are these other arrangements.
Yes.
So what happens? Because I try to figure what is the weight, what is the impact of sex outside of marriage? How does that affect the marriage? What are people going through when you cheat?
Here's a good way to think about it. It changes the self-esteem of the marriage. So self-esteem is your feelings of self-worth, your feelings of self-confidence. Now imagine that being questioned because your partner went out. So maybe before it was on a real high, right? Anywhere over 6 to 10 within the relationship, with the one being low. Now your person goes out and you find out about it. That's going to drop that number significantly, because what people start to then identify is they start to go internally first. What am I not doing? That is the first thing that most people do. And when they start to break that down and they can't find an answer for their own sense of self, then they come in after the relationship, because I feel bad. Now you have to feel bad too, because I don't get why this had to happen. And one of the things we have to do is that not because a person's cheating, it has to do with you. A lot of times people cheat because they have their own internal battles that they're dealing with, and they just haven't figured out how to deal with those. So I'm just trying to tell people out there, before you keep blaming yourself and letting that negative self-talk run a whole recording in your mind, realize that sometimes it had nothing to do with you. You could have been the best person with the best elasticity and smell ever, and that wouldn't have changed nothing. Some people are just not good people. We'll just say that.
Some people are just broken. There's some broken. What would it mean to you, Jonathan? If you gave everything in you're surprised, like what does that mean? Because I think sex means it means either something or nothing. You know,
for a man, it's for a man, it's shredded betrayal first, because especially if as a man you cut off, if you stop doing all your silly stuff and you was monogamous with this woman, and essentially if I'm providing and trying to be there, and the only thing that you really require from this woman is to be not to cheat. I mean, as part of it, it's like a betrayal. So a man go inward first, like to say, what did I do wrong? I mean, am I not the head of this house? Why couldn't you come to me? Because men are fixers naturally. They want to fix the situation. They sometimes don't listen, but they try to look at it and say, how can I fix this? Or how could I have fixed this? Why didn't she just come to me? We could have fixed this together. And so, yes, a man start to think inwardly and start to think, what did I do wrong, or what didn't I do? And it's like betrayal, especially when a man even think about another man taking having sex with, especially his wife. I already said that men tend to put their wife on a pedestal. So imagine, and I'm not saying you should, but imagine this woman you have on a pedestal as my good wife, or the love of my life, the mother of my kids, going out and another man is doing what we supposed to do together. It crushes a man, and like Miss Dr. E was saying, your self-esteem, your word as a man. What am I doing wrong? Especially if I know I'm busting my butt every day trying to provide, and you still went out there and cheat on me. For a man, that's why men take it hard, because we know, because we start to associate how long it took for us to be intimate. In most cases, where we had to connect. I had to do certain things to even get you on that in that situation. So what did you do, or what did he do to do? Did he have to do the same things? So that means that you have to have some type of connection, or a strong connection, for you to even. Or this is what men are thinking, that you have to have some type of strong connection to even get to that physical aspect of it. It may not necessarily be, but that's why a lot of men take it hard, because we're thinking that women don't just give out sex as easy. So he had to be in there for a minute to even achieve that.
That's interesting. That's just how we have to break the other stigma, where it's that men don't need emotional fulfillment as well through sex. It's the opposite, is that thinking that women always need emotional fulfillment through sex. And so if she cheats, then she had to have this person around long, or she had to have some emotional connection to that person. And I think if we could break that on across the board, we realize that it really comes down to the individual. There are some people who just can do it and have no emotional attachments via, and there are others who cannot. And so it all comes down at the end of the day of learning that person at that particular time too. So there are different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting. I think understanding or learning that this is a big, it's a big topic in terms of its weight, right? And how relationships change over time, and they go through their highs and their lows, right? And how do you? Because I'm always curious. How do you tell if something has changed? Do you know if something has changed? Like, let's say, for example, you've been married 50 and 20 years, 30 years. Are you supposed to expect a sexual dip? Is that supposed to come? Does that come at year 5? Are these things natural? Because what if you're just moseying along and you feel like everything's still normal, but you missed the fact that maybe your husband needed more sex or your wife needed more? Like, how do we have these conversations, man?
Usually men tend to be behind the 8 ball sometimes, because a lot of the guys I talked to, they felt like everything was great. They thought everything was great, and only to realize that she wasn't happy, or she was stepping up with Joey from office, and all the time he's thinking everything is great. So men tend to, and it could be a sense of complacency. You complacent, or you, I wouldn't say taking your wife for granted, but that's your wife. So you tend to not be as sensitive or be as in tune, because especially at 15 years in the game, that's just Maggie. Or don't worry about Maggie. She always complains or whatever. And you take it for granted. But all this time she is trying to tell you, listen.
Like red flag.
You need to shower before you come to bed. You're gonna play ball with your guys and you will come back to she's telling you, but most men just brush off like, let me just buy us some whatever tomorrow, or let me just bring us some chicken sauce the next day, or whatever, and brush it off. And all this time she's telling you, and I think it's vice versa. Men also might tell women, I'm watching the game, stop bugging me while I'm watching the game. And then the next thing you know, you don't see him come home because he's by the bar or by Susie's house, because Susie don't bug him, so he's catered to him while he's watching the game. So I think it's mutual, where after a long period of being in a committed relationship, you tend to lose focus or lose touch with the person sometimes, because you're so busy trying to take care of kids or other things. You tend to lose touch, in my opinion.
Yeah. Dr. E?
Yeah, I think we just have to make sure that at some point there is a conversation, whether it's about things we want sexually and things we don't want sexually, things we want in a relationship, things we don't want in a relationship. And we have to really practice active listening. Active listening is a skill set that every person must learn. Just because I'm sitting there talking to you, it doesn't actually mean that I'm listening to you. And that becomes a huge part. So we must work on doing that.
I see Jonathan. Jonathan is doing that. Yeah.
We're good at tuning. Yeah, we tend to. A lot of men are good at saying, yeah, but you so into whatever they're doing, they're hyper focused on that, and we know not to get fussed out. We tend to we mastered how to say, sure, yeah. And then
I'm listening.
And if you ask them a couple minutes later what the hell you was talking about, they agreed to, they don't even know. Yeah. That's like, trust me,
my husband gets fussed out. Like, I'm listening. Yeah, no, I'm listening. You ain't hear nothing I say. How? Right? All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be joined. We're talking about sex and relationships, a wonderful conversation. Let's talk about, as we move on, aging and sex. So, the phases of sex in a monogamous relationship. Say it again, Dr. E?
We'll just call it a relationship.
A relationship, okay. Because I know Dr. E, when I say monogamous, Dr. E is like, no, there's too many options in relationship.
I just want to put it out there. I am for monogamy, but it's everybody has their own choice.
You see, she's pro-monogamy with choice.
I don't know.
Look how you spin my words.
You gotta watch Dr. E, you know. You gotta watch Dr. E. These young doctors.
That's a politician in training right there.
That's right. That's what she is. That's what she is. She's trying to be Minister of Social Services. I watch it up. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. When we come back, more with Dr. E and our good friend Jonathan Edgecombe as we talk about sex and relationships. Good stuff.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
All right, and we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We're on our last. This has been a very fast-moving show. Special thanks, of course, to my good guests who are joining us, Dr. Adrika Richardson and Jonathan Edgecombe joining us on the show today.
Hey.
Always a pleasure to have you both on. You definitely make the relationship show more entertaining. I'll tell you both that. All right, we're talking about sex and relationships. Dr. E, I want to turn this to you now, right? I know that there's data, there's studies, science, all of your degree come from somewhere. Yeah,
It's legitimate too. It's not from just
and in honorary.
It's no. This is real. I went through blood, sweat, and tears for this one. So the question I think you were going to ask is about how your physical self changes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things we have to understand, and I'll go over as much as the anatomy and physiology, psychologically too, of male and female. So one of the things, I'll start with males. One of the things we start to see is that males do tend to have a longer period of sex drive early on. And the research has proven that men don't necessarily start to see any decline till about age 60. That is typical.
That's great.
And so even when they start to see decline, for some, it may go still very gradually. You'll start to see lowering your testosterone levels. So you may not have the same amount of endurance or adrenaline and all that stuff associated with sexual practices. You might also start to feel issues in your physical self too, with your ability to keep or an erection, or even the ability to withstand from ejaculation. So those are things you can start to see as the body starts to age over time. Those are natural things. Now, what I would say is that when you start to notice these changes, and if you're routinely getting your physical checks, your doctor will probably make you aware of how that can happen. Because one of the biggest things is that when it comes to hormones, when your hormones dip at any point from females or from males, you will start to have a lot of not only physical but mental health changes, and some of them you may not recognize, right? I know me and my friends sometimes make jokes about it, where we'll say like, "Oh, he's hormonal now." That means like male's on his period, right? And so what we're talking about is the idea that you could start to see that shift, right? That hormonal shift that they're going through, but men are educated on the fact that they go through them just as much as women. It's just not as intense. It may not be as long, and it may not happen as often, so we don't identify it. So what we tend to see is that the slowdown, for sure, we identify it at 60, but for some males, it could even happen earlier. Let's say you had, you're someone who suffers from like things like diabetes or even heart disease issues. We start to see that number actually starting much earlier. Or even the fact that males with diabetic issues have a lot of erection issues that's associated with that. So you have to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And so these are things to pay attention to. For females, on the other hand, what you naturally see is that women first have to deal with the fact that with their menstrual cycles, for all women, their hormone levels change rapidly. I know there are some people who, let's say, for instance, because they're not experiencing menstruation every month. Some women only get it like 2-3 times a year. So their sex drives may be different from someone who gets it on a monthly basis, right? As well as there are people who have severe mood swings during that time due to how much their hormones dip, to the point where in the last year, a lot of women had to go on antidepressants for the 2-week period of menstruation. And it's 2-week period because the doctors are trying to prevent it the week before. The moodiness will start to happen, and then the week of. And I've had several clients who had to go. I had to refer them to a medical doctor for it because they couldn't control it. Like it's things that can happen to a female's body so unique that even doctors are still fascinated by it, and how much the person's hormone levels were dropping. And I'm talking, these aren't older women. I'm talking, these are women in their like late 20s, maybe early 30s,
wow.
these huge dips for no reason. And the only explanation it's when they looked at it and they pulled the levels, their hormone levels drop so significantly during that time that they have to take the medication to help to try to level it out.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you guys call women moody, it's much more than that. Sometimes it really has to do with their physical health concerns.
You see, Jonathan just looked to the ceiling, just for the record. Jonathan's like, yeah, now they're going to ask for pills.
In addition to that, you have women who can go through PCOS, I can never remember.
Polycystic.
Yeah, ovarian syndrome. I think that's what it is. So that creates a lot of hormonal issues. I remember I had a friend in college at one point. She had to go through early onset endometriosis, which created another thing. And the doctors at that point she was in her early 30s. They were going to put her body in early onset menopause just to reverse the symptoms. That's how bad her symptomology was. And that was affecting her sex life. Women who get fibroids, that's a big thing that's happening lately, especially within the Black community.
Not even lately. It's been going on. Bahamian women have been struggling with fibroids for forever.
I remember when I went with my mom one time to a visit to Cleveland, and the doctor was just giving some health information in general. And he was saying that he'd never seen as much as an increase within the last 5 years that he had seen for specifically Caribbean women coming to deal with fibroids. And he said it had to have been something in our diet because the amount of shift and the fibroids that he had taken out over the course of that 5-year period, he was stunned. And he was doing the research on it too, because he was like, this is the geographic location of where all of these women are coming from. So that's another issue. And then we see the other part. Women get in their sexual peaks after 40. And I think a lot of it has to come with when your self-image is secure, you are okay with your body. And now it's like, you know yourself sexually, I want what I want and I want it now. And so that starts to happen for women. And when that happens, and I think it's almost like the body's rearing up to then get ready for menopause when it kind of like slows down. And so you'll start to see maybe females wanting to engage in sexual practices more often, and sometimes in very different and changing times. That's all I'm going to say about that.
And I think, well, does that make sense for the cougar then, right? Like, is that why we got cougars now?
Yes.
Well, not now. We've always had cougars, I'm sure, but we named them cougars. That this changing landscape, right?
Everybody want a little pretty young thing,
Even the sisters.
They don't talk as much or give you as much attitude or roll their eyes as much. And they are often very much want to meet your needs. So, yeah.
Cool. Look at Jonathan. What are your thoughts, my friend? All you got is thoughts.
Well, I don't even know with the pretty young thing, just from the men perspective, because I can't speak from not for females, but from the man perspective, well, I don't even know what to say. I'm stunned right now. I'm learning a lot. But as it relates to older men dealing with the younger women, they're dealing with a different generation where these younger women are moody. They require. They're not as like I guess the young guys dealing with the older women, where they may just want to meet your needs. The younger women, they require um, and a lot of stuff, and they tend to be mouthy. They're not as mundane or quiet as probably the male are to the older women. These younger, this new generation, this hot girl, summer generation girls, they're totally different, and they
They ain't playing with y'all. Y'all,
no, they're not playing.
y'all want the good old days. Y'all want the millennials. That's y'all.
Just be quiet. Just be quiet and do what you got to do and go home. But no, they don't want it like that. They want to pray for us. Not me. Pray for the man.
It's never you. We just want to make that clear. It's never you.
Thank you.
Jonathan Edgecombe, Dr. Drika Richardson. All right, let's talk about it now. All right. One of the things, you mentioned something during the break. What has switched, right? The need for what is going on as we get later on down in our relationships. The need now where men are wanting that connection, and then there are women who are not needing that sort of that connection in the sexual relationship. Explain that to me, Dr. E. When does this happen? How does this happen? Is it something that's just happening now where it doesn't even matter the age, where a lot more women are turning and saying, listen, I don't need all of this connection you're talking about. I want, I have other needs. Or is it age related?
I don't think it's just happening now. I think a lot of things seem like they're happening now because we're a lot more vocal and a lot more comfortable with our sexuality, our expression. And so a lot of it seems like just all of a sudden. And so I want to put that out there that I think if we even look back to, I was watching some period piece the other day, and women back in the day used to have their own concubines and stuff like that. Especially if they were regal women with power, they used to do what they wanted to do. And so I think when we start to see the shift happen, where maybe the power dynamics change, but I'd say that for most women, typically, or like what a client said to me recently, it was, well, I kind of was trained this way, right? So my partner trained me to be this person. And meaning like, this is how we have sex. We've learned to have a lot of sex. We don't necessarily make love a lot of times. And now that I'm getting I have more time, less distractions, I want more sex, and he wants more intimacy. And it's, how do I unlearn what you've taught me for a decade?
Which is meaning let's just do it.
Let's just do it, right? Let's just do it. And so
what? People just be doing sex and just do it? You can
be
I don't go ahead. I was just gonna say that when I'm saying just do it, meaning like there's not always time for foreplay. There's not always time for a lead up. There's sometimes y'all get 10 minutes because someone running late for something, or the fact that the kid's about to wake up in so much time, so you got to do what you got to do. So you get in this habit, right? And that becomes behavior's habit forming. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you see the shift happen where like the maturity sets in and settling down, and maybe you don't need to be as involved with the children anymore, as involved with getting out to all these responsibilities. You have more time. And so you want to change it up. But now the person one partner is already used to the other way, and they haven't shifted yet. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of it is, this is where the communication comes in with timing, because you may be here and I may be at this other place. And so maybe it's just a compromise, whereas like sometimes we do it your way and sometimes we do it my way.
Jonathan?
I was just about to suggest that, because to me that's like a cop-out when a woman would say, he taught me this way. You was also teaching him as well. You may have been voicing your opinion that, listen, I need more intimacy. So now, it shouldn't be I didn't say that again.
Now, 10 years later, I'm thinking of the SpongeBob thing. 10 hours later.
No, but I mean, you also had some verbals in there, didn't you? You said that it may have been because of, the kid's gonna wake up, or I know they every morning they busting in the room. We gotta get this in quick. So it was a mutual thing as well. It wasn't only, I mean, especially if you have kids, and anyone who had kids, they tend to, especially if you have unlocked door policies in your house, they bust in at any hour, especially if you had a bad dream. So you tend to get it in.
Lock the door.
doors.
Unlocked door
Lock
rules.
the door.
Yeah,
Unlocked door rules need to apply to every room besides the adult room.
That's right.
Yeah, but I agree because
Why? Because
that could be traumatizing. That could be traumatizing.
That's
seeing
a
your parents then go.
traumatizing experience.
It happened to me once, and that's nasty. But anyway,
wait, what happened? You saw your parents, or your kid saw you?
no, I saw my parents, and they shouldn't have been doing that. That's wrong.
What age were you, Jonathan?
I was too young. I was traumatized. You get me thinking about it. I think the image.
Trauma. Still in you.
Think about the image right now is nasty. See, I didn't even know what I'm saying no more.
I know, mess you up. Lord, Dr. E, he
But-
need a session. The brother
But
messed up.
but back to what I was saying initially. I think both genders teach each other how to treat them, and I don't think it's going to be 10 years later, but based on different situations, men learn, women learn from each other, and eventually we get it. You want more intimacy, and it could be that the children have grown up now. They're out of the house, or we, like you said, we don't have to be all quickie or whatever. And the woman should have also morphed into or changed with the changing times as well. Now that you see that we're not rushing it no more, and you need to understand why we were doing certain things as well. You need to understand why we was being quick. Now, if you don't understand why we were being quick, then I don't know what you was doing in the relationship. But we're doing something, certain things because of something, a reason.
I have a question for you, something that just crossed my mind. Because, of course, we're talking about sexual relationships in a, heterosexual context, right? And that is.
Hold
Go
on.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going. Just don't panic, straight man. Don't panic. Okay? Straight man, don't panic. Don't lose your shirt.
Go ahead.
What happens, because there are some relationships, and I think there's a lot of people on the DL, right?
Mhm.
Or a lot of people who are in relationships and have figured out something switched, and now they think they might be interested or have experienced another sexual experience.
I've seen, I've guys, once again, a lot of women. I really, like I said, speaking from what men say to me, where they realize that woman is stepping out, and initially that's exciting. Oh, I'm gonna participate. I can have two women, but sometimes the woman don't want you to participate, and she just want another woman, and it's devastating for a husband to realize that my wife is either bisexual or lesbian now, and it's devastating. Like I said, initially that you hear that and you think as a man, oh, I'm gonna have two women, but I don't always have to be. And I had one person who inboxed me and saying, how does she compete? How does she compete with a man? She found out she realized that her husband was cheating, only to find out he was cheating with another guy. She said, how do I compete with that? It would have been I could understand or try to compete with it if it was another woman, but how do I compete with another man? My husband wanting another man. That was devastating for her as well. So I don't know if it's something. I think that was something underpinning for years. I don't think that just sprung up. I think that was something that they was trying to battle with, or they're battling with, and they're thinking that if they got married, they would normalize it or do away with it. But I think that desire was always there, in my opinion.
I actually have a client story about that. I had this client system. They were married, a young couple in their mid-30s, and so they had started coming to therapy because they were having relationship issues. At one point, one partner took a job in another part. And so they were living apart. They were still married or whatever. And the plan was for the other partner to come join after their semester had finished.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had found out that her husband had been cheating. And so naturally, we just assume we're in this heterosexual relationship as best as I know that he's cheating with a woman. Come to find out, he had been cheating with men on Tinder and these dating apps. And here's the kicker. He had said that he had a history with it, and because of cultural pressures and other stuff, he married her because she was a woman, right? And so she felt betrayed and bamboozled because he knew this before they got married. And she felt like he should have given her the choice. And that's what it was about. He didn't give her the choice to say, hey, I've engaged in both types of relationships and I'm going to marry you, but this is kind of my worldview. And I think, believe it or not, they were able to work through it. I don't know if it was still just the cultural pressure, because we have to understand that a lot of cultural pressure is strong when it comes down to, and expectations are our family is strong when it comes to keeping the pictures together.
Mm-hmm.
But they had worked through it. They were able to get to a place of, they considered to be open and honest communication about the dynamics and how she felt betrayed. But that happens on both sides often. I've had other cases where, you invited somebody in, like Jonathan said, you thought you was getting the threesome, right? And only to realize that after the threesome, she was still threeing.
She was on the number 3 for strong.
Right. And she might have had questions about it. So I think maybe that's a question you need to ask, not only when dating, but when together, like, look, I ask that to people, maybe they find it. I don't care how they find it, but I was like, do you only date men? Do you only date women?
That's crazy that you ask.
Hold on, you ask guys that?
Yes, I do ask guys. You don't think that's important to ask? And I get very specific. I also will ask them questions of, because I sometimes I've noticed men don't consider it to be dating. So I will say to them, have you ever engaged in sexual behavior with someone of the same sex?
They'll lie. What straight man? What? They don't lie.
That kind of offensive.
That is not a Bahamian man to answer that question.
Why not? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of Bahamian men I know around here who are very much on the DL.
Yes.
And I've learned that if you don't ask specific questions, I can't be upset because I never got asked that question before. Sure. So I never had a choice to answer it. So if you get offended by that, then my red flag's going up, because why are you offended by something that has nothing, that should not be offensive to you?
Okay, let me tell you why a guy might get offensive by that. While you asking that, he may be thinking he exuding or shows a feminine
I look soft to you?
That's something like, and yeah, did I display something that I act like I like?
What you trying to say?
Right. I'm just saying the why. Just like a man would say, hey, are you something bad or negative? You might say, hold on, why are you contributing that to me or associating that
where
to me?
I come from?
Right. So I'm just saying that's why they may get offended.
Okay, but I will tell them, I was like, I'm just asking to be specific. And I'll tell them, I say, because I've had experience where people, like, if you say dating, they don't consider dating, because I did a one-off, that ain't dating, right? So I've learned that you can't just say.
Yeah, that's true. If people say there's a one-off, they don't consider that dating.
So I asked that question because I'll tell them, I was like, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, there's no,
we can't be both liking the same thing. For me, that's not my preference.
I ask different questions, but I do ask certain questions.
But I have
what questions do you ask?
Oh, okay.
I ask when it comes to groceries, eating groceries. A lot of women like that. So,
Jonathan, I have this question for you from a male's perspective. The fascination.
Nahaja, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, she does. The fascination with heterosexual man and anal sex. Because I know for a lot of women, that's questionable behavior. So can you explain that? Because I've gotten different responses from different males. And I'd just be curious to know what yours is, because
I had a friend. I had a friend who questioned one of my guys in New York, one of my friends. Anyway, to make a long story short, his girl was on her monthly, and she suggested it, and he started to question himself to say, he's from Abaco, and she's from New York and Puerto Rican, and I guess she was adventurous, and anyway, the point is, he came to me and said, "Why do I look gay? Why is she even suggesting that?" And I said, "Did you do it?" She said, "Yeah, I did it." And I said, "Well," and he said, Like, no homo, I'm not gay, but that was the best, whatever, because it was tighter. I mean, whatever than the normal situation. So, does the question is being asked in my group a lot? Does that make a man gay if he engaged in that particular act with a female versus the male?
Well, I mean, it can't
No, but I was
can't
saying,
be gay if you're doing it with a female.
right, saying that's the whole controversy right there. Because some people would say, no, that's still gay because you engaging in that backdoor activity, regardless of if it's a male or female, you still have gay tendencies, and that's where the controversy lies. Me personally, I don't know. The jury's still out for me in terms of if you do that with a girl. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. If you do it with a girl,
Then you're not, then you're not gay. It's a lot. And mind you, Dr. E, what you sent to us is a lot. I think that the reason why there's so much down low is just that folks won't admit where they are. Right? Just have to be honest with yourself. Even Jonathan's just having just a bit uneasy with this conversation for fear that he may say one or two words that may have people questioning. You know what I mean? It's just, and I feel sorry for a lot of people. Like, okay, look, I feel sorry. I would prefer you be straight out than hide, because it causes so much headache and heartache. And go to your God for whatever you need to go to your God for with it, and then just live your life at this point. With Jesus being
right.
But I agree with Dr. Ito. You should ask. I like the fact that she does ask. You should ask.
I think it's crazy that we even have to ask. And I child, I'm so happy. Oh Lord, I'm so glad I ain't dating right now. I mean, marriage got its own struggles, right? But
did you ask?
No, I didn't think to ask, right? But I mean, I was hoping the straight man I saw was a straight man I'd marry, right?
Yeah.
Well,
nowadays I get it. You have to ask.
Like, you have to ask, and you have to ask specifically. And so when, or if you've ever dated somebody and they're like, oh, like they keep trying to constantly, for like backdoor.
Yes,
like that's a little.
That's a sign.
That's like, I don't know. I get it. I get the fact that there's different elasticity there and all that stuff, but at the same time, it's like,
no.
So because I remember this one client was keep telling me that's all her partner wanted to do, and I was like,
that ain't no red flag. That's a red cannon.
Try to like have a conversation with the person, see if you can engage in other stuff. And again, at the end of the day, everybody just needs to live their truth. There is nothing wrong with it if that's what you prefer. And I know some females who prefer that. Like I know some females who that is their thing. Like they get off at a different level with it, right? Yes, that is their thing. And this is a no judgment zone. That's what I'm saying. Do whatever's your thing. The issue comes down is when people aren't living and telling the truth. Okay? And I think this is where you start to see a lot of even kind of relationship crime issues happen, because you have not told me exactly what's been happening. So now I am reactive because you didn't give me a choice, right? And I knew this. I worked with this guy once who I used to always like, I told him, I was like, he was just dating all these women and stuff. And I was just like, your disposition doesn't really seem to be that way. And I asked him, I said, and then
she put that nicely.
Disposition.
She put that nicely.
Then he said to me that he was bisexual. And I said, okay, cool. But he doesn't like to tell people that because, female judge him and they don't want to be in a relationship with him. And at this point, he was dating this female, and she was a lawyer. She was successful and stuff. He was a professor. You know what I mean? Like, really, really, these were two successful people. And I said, let me tell you this. As your friend, you need to tell her your disposition. You need to give her a choice. Because at the end of the day, yes, women judge all the time. Men judge all the time. We all judge, right?
Yeah.
But if she finds out on her own, this is not going to go well. And so, yeah, that, because you can't lie about it. You can't lie about, and then it brings more questions in, because now you're telling me you're always hanging out with these friends, right?
Oh,
and so
Jesus.
now I see this question.
You trying to question them, like, buddy, you say you watching the game?
Everybody gets
You watching the
questioned
game? What game you been watching?
You've been playing basketball?
Mm-hmm. But
Versus the fact
Mhm.
that if she knew ahead of time, because I have friends who are of all different, their sexual orientations all over the spectrum, right? But people also know what mine is, right? So it's not necessarily in a thing when I'm hanging out with these friends of these who are over the spectrum. So because that's what that was set up at front. So there creates no trust issues. So I'm saying people are creating unnecessary trust issues within their relationship. So yes, you may get rejected, but then you need to find somebody who's okay with it. Because, believe it or not, I also know a lot of females who are like, okay, cool, we gotta be together. Like, you told me, it ain't no big deal to me.
Yeah.
I know males who are like that too. You tell me, I'm okay with that. So
I know. Oh, yeah. But we're in a progressive age where we don't only have to worry about that. You also got to worry about how to be politically correct. Women, transgender persons who, you know, I have to put this correctly, but some of them feel that they don't have to tell the man that they.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. You gotta say.
No, but a lot of them feel that they are genuinely women, and they feel offended by the fact that they have to tell you or say that because in their mind they're a woman. So
let me ask this question: if they're fully transgendered, then meaning
no,
they have the full operation. Well, see, then you got to tell. You got to tell. You can't be waving that. I'm sorry, PC here. You can't be having that junk down in the trunk, but then you represent or you showing as female, but you are still. That's a big secret to keep. But and I think that leads to violence. That leads to violence.
So let's say this. I have to say this because there's a difference between gender and sexuality. So we need to make sure we know the difference, because when we're born with a biological sex, right? Yes. And there's only three. Believe it or not, there's three, not two. There's male, female, and intersex, because there are times where the doctors can't tell,
and the parents choose.
Right, the parents choose. Right. Yeah. Now they've stopped doing that because there's so many psychological issues with that. Yeah. And then you have sexuality, sexuality, which is identifying your sexual orientation. Right. So when somebody is transgender, their gender and their biological sex and their sexual orientation, the biological sex and their physical appearance aren't necessarily matching.
Exactly.
And so that does not mean, though, necessarily that their sexual orientation changes, believe it or not. Not all people's sexual orientation change just because they're transgender. People
that's a choice they choose. They choose to change it, right?
We all choose, believe it or not. We think that we're all heterosexual. I don't know where that narrative came from. But that is, we've all made a choice at some point in our lives that this is our preference.
What if you didn't have it? What if you? I don't know. I hear you, but I don't know if that. Because I think that you choose when you know that there are choices. But what if you just came up and this is what it is, like male female relationship. So then I think now that people know that there are like options, like, oh, I could be this, I could be that.
I think when I'm saying we choose based on our attraction.
Okay, all right.
That's what I mean.
Okay,
I'm very clear on that. We choose based on attraction.
That's you was losing me there. You was losing me there, buddy. You understand? Yeah.
It's like, what? I didn't choose none. It was what it was.
No. We choose based on attraction.
I feel you.
Because there are women I find attractive, but I have no attraction to them.
Of course. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I got you. But I feel you on that. That makes perfect sense.
I go back to I think
people just need to tell the truth, Jonathan.
I think give the man a choice. Let him know, because it could end up bad for
woman. You're right.
For either party, right?
Yeah. But the truth is difficult, though. I think when you have something that big, where you know that there are stigmas and norms, let's not belittle the fact that sometimes telling that truth, you know that there's rejection, a lot more so than acceptance. And so it is difficult to tell the truth. And you're hoping, I think most people in that position are hoping that you will like the person who I am, so that when I tell you that I also have this big secret, that you're still into me. That's a big secret.
Don't let the secret be big for true.
Sex.
So I just want to say a couple of things about why sex is important. And these are things all experts have agreed on. So we can get off of this.
But we're almost out of time. So as quickly as you can.
So the first thing is that all experts agree that sex gives you an emotional high, right? It's blissful. It gives you that afterglow. And it's like, they always equate it to like a runner's high. If you ever run and you feel that good, that exercise jolt, it's the same thing you get from sex. We also know that sex is also, it helps you relieve stress. No matter what, at the end of the day, it's a stress relief because you're releasing oxytocin into the bloodstream and you're feeling good. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that it can boost your confidence, right? We know that sex may not give you automatically turn your levels all the way up, like Rihanna said, but what it can do is that for most of us, to some degree, it helps us like fight those insecurities because we feel wanted, we feel touched, we feel loved by another person. Another thing is that you'll both get a better night's sleep. It does help you get to sleep. You know, half the time get you tired too. We also know that in sex it is an extension of intimacy that extends beyond the bedroom. So we have to make sure that we're creating intimacy all the time so we can actually increase more sex. They go hand in hand. And the last thing is that all experts do agree on is that post cuddles are the best.
Post cuddles are the best.
If you have air conditioning. If you have air conditioning.
First of all, let me just say this. In 2021, who else you going to do this and ain't gonna air condition?
Listen, things tough, man. Some people, listen, I was making, y'all said something, keep the room door locked. I feel for people and parents and families who don't have doors. There's some people who really are in such impoverished situations.
They have a curtain.
They have curtains.
Or beads, little beads.
You can't do nothing. Ah, Jesus.
Amen.
Just take the wheel.
Figure it out.
I gotta figure it out.
I would do it.
No, I can't. No AC. Boy,
hey, I'm privileged. I'm speaking about from your privilege.
You're right, because I'm privileged to have AC, but I ain't doing this. No heat. No heat. What? We getting a Lasco fan even.
First of all,
that's hot yoga. That's all that is, hot yoga.
Look, you ever get to the point where like your body's just like, oh God, like
I think we all. That's
in the heat. You stink more. No.
That's not.
No.
No. We are ready in summer, which is thigh sticking to plastic chair season. We really don't need to not be doing stuff without air conditioning.
No. Just listen. Buy a Lasco fan. Get to
go in the march. Go in the march and turn the car on the air conditioner. Go in the march.
Then you call it the mash-up march because y'all can't fold. Ain't no leg gonna be straight in that march. I tell you that. All right. That's the crab march because y'all be doing all kind of weird stuff with that little thing. The note, get yourself a pen. That's the most you can do with that.
No, at least the notes. Isn't notes the bigger one? No, it's the cube.
Notes are bigger.
The cube is the big one.
The cube is a big one.
The cube
is stretch out. You can stretch out a
whole bedroom.
Man,
that's efficiency right there. That's another efficiency.
It's a what? I don't even want you to repeat that. I don't think.
It's an efficiency, he said.
Oh, efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah. You just can't park that efficiency after 11. You just better get home. That efficiency, you can't go to the efficiency.
Get charged $5,000 because someone got charged $5,000 for having fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, it's in the newspaper this week.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I said that's a lot. People could kill it. You could knock down the whole person and get charged $5,000.
I'm telling you. I mean, I just saying that's a lot. That's a lot. And poor things. Listen,
they ain't gonna do it no more.
They probably could become nuns and monks after that.
Unless it's that kind that just make you wake up in the middle of the night and knock on the window. Don't be trying to do that.
Don't be. Well, Jonathan says some people ain't got no choice.
You got a choice. It's called self-pleasure.
That is a choice.
That is a choice. Yes.
That is a choice. I think us women have it easier than men.
Yeah, man, gotta go find some shortening or lard or something.
Come on now. We gotta.
I was talking with cooking. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja. Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We were talking sex and relationships. Dr. Drika Richardson, Jonathan Edgecombe, my good friend, founder, administrator. Of course, he's a father. He's a businessman as well. But he is always welcomed on the show because of all of the candor. And of course, Dr. E, helping all of you married folk, you couples, you hetero, you bi. What is the other one? Homo, all of you. Not homo, is that it?
Yeah.
All of you. She's helping all of you get your sexual, your personhood together and your family and marriage therapist, Dr. Drika Richardson, rpc-ltd.com, or you can call her at
425-0718.
And Jonathan, what's the name of your Facebook group?
Real Questions Women Want Men to Answer.
And brothers, you can get your questions answered as well. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Everyone, thank you. Have a great day. And I hope that this helped you as much as it has helped other people. And we are out.